Bore da pawb. Mae pobl dal yn ymuno'r cyfarfod. People are still joining, but I'll start now. Bore da pawb. Croeso I webinar cyntaf Media Cymru I siarad am y broses ymgeisio am y Cronfa Sbarduno 2024. Welcome all to our first webinar to talk about the process of applying to the Seed Fund 2024. Gemma Trihana dwi ac efo aelodau eraill o'r tîm. Dwi'n hapus iawn I ateb eich cwestiynau. I'm Gemma and along with the other team members, very happy to answer your questions. Os hoffech chi ateb cwestiwn yn y Gymraeg, bydd aelodau'r tîm dwyieithog y tîm cyfathrebu yn monitoro'r brwch chat a'r nodwedd holi ac ateb I geisio ateb eich cwestiynau neu rannu linciau ar gyfer mwy o wybodaeth ar ein safle we. So we will be monitoring the chat box and the Q&A box just on the top of your screen there. You're welcome to ask questions in English or Welsh. Our team will be on hand to share relevant links. Croeso I chi hefyd e-bostio. Please do email us as well in English or Welsh if you have any follow-up queries to media.cymru@cardiff.ac.uk. We'll put that email address in the chat as well for you. Mae'n hyfryd gael eich cwmni bore 'ma. Diolch am ymuno â ni. It's absolutely lovely to have your company. I'm going to pass over nawr. Hoffwn ni nawr gyflwyno Dr Matt Boswell. Diolch.
Diolch Gemma. Bore da pawb. I'm Matt Boswell, the Media Cymru Programme Manager, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to our Seed Fund webinar today. This morning, we'll begin by giving you a quick overview of Media Cymru, and then we'll run through the scope and application process for our Seed Fund. But first, some housekeeping. As Gemma mentioned, you should see a chat box on the side of your screen. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to leave them there and our team will be on hand to respond throughout the session, or else we can return to them in the Q&A session at the end. Teams also has inbuilt real-time subtitles which can be switched on in your settings. This webinar will also be recorded and uploaded online along with the slide deck so that you can then refer to them afterwards. And we're also going to keep our FAQs updated on a specific web page for this call. So now I'll kick things off by giving you just a very brief overview of Media Cymru. So, first slide please, Ali. Media Cymru is a consortium of 22 different organisations with a shared overarching ambition, which is to turn Wales, and in particular the Cardiff capital region, into a global hub for media production and innovation, with a focus on green and fair economic growth. Led by Cardiff University, our consortium includes broadcasters, studios, technology and media production companies, as well as universities and policymakers at all levels of government. Together, we're delivering a portfolio of projects across the media sector, addressing a range of industry challenges in areas such as virtual production, post-production, data storage, environmental sustainability, diversity and inclusion, media tourism, news, and interactive film. Next slide, please, Ali, thanks. Given the sort of very diverse and wide-ranging nature of our programme and all of these projects that we're delivering, we aim to ensure that everything that we do is threaded through our 4 strategic pillars, which are green, fair, global and growth. The majority of our public funding comes from UK Research and Innovation's Strength in Places Fund, which is a place-based economic growth programme. This means that our funders therefore want to see their investments leading to business growth, new jobs, enhanced productivity and the like, which is fine, so do we. But we're also aware that the media sector faces many challenges when it comes to diversity and inclusion and environmental sustainability in particular. We're therefore committed to ensuring that any economic growth that we generate is both green and fair. Our global pillar also acknowledges that we're operating in a highly competitive, globalised landscape when it comes to media production, distribution and consumption. So, That's a very quick summary of who we are, what we do, what we're all about. And I'll now hand over to my colleague, Adam Partridge, to talk you through our seed fund call. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Matt. Hello, everybody. Croeso pawb. My name's Adam. I'm one of the R&D producers here at Media Cymru. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the innovation pipeline and obviously go into more detail about the seed fund. So what is the innovation pipeline? The innovation pipeline is a series of targeted funding rounds and training opportunities, and I'm literally going to read off the slide, to increase sector capacity to carry out meaningful research, development and innovation. We support projects from very early stage through to much later stages in their R&D journey. With the seed call, we're offering up to £10,000 per project. Later in the year, through the innovation pipeline, our development fund will run, where we'll be offering up to £50,000, and then potentially in the autumn, our annual scale-up fund will launch, supporting projects with awards of over £50,000. Key dates for you to bear in mind. For the seed call, we opened this call on the 26th of February, and applications will close on the 8th of April. This call is open to everybody. We're trying to support freelancers through to established businesses, and every successful applicant will have 3 to 6 months to complete their project, and they'll be supported by our consortium partners at PDR and the Alacrity Foundation. You'll be hearing a little bit more from Andy and Joe from PDR a little bit later on this presentation. I should also note that the innovation pipeline includes 2 other funds that open throughout the year. One is the BBC Content Innovation Fund, and the second that's recently been launched is the BBC Global Formats Fund. These will launch as and when we've arranged the briefs with BBC and S4C. But just to be clear, our core funds for you to be aware of are Seed, Development Fund and Scale Up. Next slide, please. So what are we looking to support through the Seed Fund? We're looking for projects that may be new formats or new ways of creating content. We're particularly interested in virtual production, innovation in game content production, placemaking and cultural or media tourism, new and inclusive media business models and production processes. We're interested in bilingual production and new approaches to delivering news and public information. We're also particularly interested in immersive storytelling and the application of XR technologies, virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. We're also interested this time in sustainable solutions to the challenges of net zero. And if you're particularly interested in this, we'd recommend you take a look at the outcomes from the Green New Deal transformation plan for Wales. Alongside all these, we're aware of growing interest in artificial intelligence, so we'd be interested in projects that explore the ethical use of AI in media and content production. Next slide, please. Thank you. What we're not funding are projects that we would consider to be business as usual. So general business development, we would not be able to support. Would also not be able to support one-off art commissions or content creation, what I would call traditional content creation. So the direct production of short films, plays, live music events, production or traditional development approaches to feature films or television pilots. Next slide, please. I'm going to hand over now to our collaborators at PDR. So that's Dr. Andrew Walters and Joe. Over to you guys.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Andy. I'm here with my colleague Joe. We're from an organisation called PDR, and our role within this project is to lead the innovation support along with our colleagues at Alacrity. And what does that really mean? That really means providing some practical support to help you on your R&D journey. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is by a number of sessions that you will have with us, 3 compulsory sessions, in fact, where you come in and you don't just report to us on what your project is doing, but rather we explore together the way in which your project is developing and try to provide practical help and advice to help that move forward. So probably worth talking a little bit about what exactly research and development is or could be. And really, it's about the work that you do to create new things. And those things, they could be products, they could be services, they could be processes, they could be described as experiences, or they could be changes to your business models. Really, what R&D means is doing the research to inform your development. And the way that we support that is by advising you and helping you find ways to engage with your target audience and your stakeholders as early as possible and as often as possible, as a way of managing that development risk, of ensuring that you create something that is useful and valuable to somebody else. Could I have the next slide, please? So there are lots and lots of definitions out there on what research and development is. Some of the common ones describe it as being novel, things that are new to the world, new to your industry or new to your organization. It's a creative process, which really means it's an exploration of doing something new or delivering something new or doing something in a new way. It is a necessarily uncertain process because it begins with a challenge, begins with a question you're trying to answer. And what that means is that it's a process of research. It's about doing that research to discover how you might resolve this challenge and how will it meet user needs. We will help you to do that in a systematic way. Obviously, that's a planned and budgeted approach, but it's also a way of addressing and reducing your development risk by that early engagement with users and stakeholders and doing that engagement in iteration. And ultimately, the output should be transferable in some way. So that means reproducible results or learnings that you can use in your business, not just for this project, but for the way that you undertake R&D in the future. Most importantly, what we're doing here is supporting you in a structured way of taking your idea forward and doing that based on both your user needs and your organizational needs. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Jo now to talk a little bit about some of the projects that we've supported in the past.
Diolch, Andy. Shwmae pawb. So I'm going to talk about 2 projects that we've previously funded within the seed fund, and they're 2 very different fields for these projects. So the 2 that we've got up on the screen, the virtual prop house, which is done by Rusty Design, and then using immersive multimedia technologies in anxiety reduction therapy programs for young people and their families, which is done by Ange Macmillan. So these are different field because they're different sizes. So the team at Rusty Design, there's 4 of them that were working on this project. And then with the one with the immersive media technologies, that one was Ange Macmillan, who was doing it mainly by herself. So for these ones, the team at Rusty, they come from an engineering background, and they wanted to utilize their knowledge and experiences to understand how they can apply that for the design and build of props in both a virtual and a physical way in a sustainable manner. So for them, sustainability focus was around not just environmental, but also the process that they were taking. They applied a user-centered design approach to their practices, so a UCD approach. You'll hear us talking about that a lot. And they were looking at the feasibility around the needs of those that were using props, so within productions, but they also looked at the needs of those that would create the props as well. They also looked at technological needs, and they looked at the storage and the life cycle needs as well within that process. For Ange, Ange was taking her practice knowledge and experience within counselling as an accredited counsellor. So she supports young people with teenage anxiety around school attendance, and wanted to understand how immersive technology could be utilised to support those young people and to make sense of the experiences that they were having during that time. So Ange took a user-centred design approach to her research and development to understand the needs of those that she had identified as users, and work with them to co-create and test her ideas, as well as taking all the opportunities available to her to learn and test her new knowledge there. Both of these projects were highly engaged within the process. They made the most of all of the design innovation support from myself, Sienna and Safia at PDR, as well as that commercialization support from Andy at Alacrity. And then through their learning during the seed phase, they had demonstrated that their project was feasible for further development. And so we've thankfully got them now on a development project as well. So I'm going to hand back over now to Adam, who can tell you a little bit more about the process.
Thank you both. So we're going to take a look at the application process now, and for anybody who's already logged in or accessed our application area, you'll be aware that there are 5 parts to our application. The first part is the eligibility criteria. We then have your contact details. We then ask you to outline your project, discuss and address any project impact, and finally complete our diversity monitoring form and baseline survey. So let's take a little bit more of a look at those sections. On eligibility criteria, if we cut straight to the bottom there, it's important that you tick these boxes. So first of all, we are looking for projects and companies that are based in Wales. Importantly, we are looking for you to confirm that you are eligible to receive grant funding awarded under MFA. This is minimum financial assistance, and you can see a bit of guidance on that above. Basically, you need to have not received over £315,000 in this year or the previous 2 financial years. Finally, you need to confirm that you are actually available to conduct the project through the period that the award will be live for. Next slide, please. So very straightforward, your contact details, this so we know who the lead is on the project, so we can contact you. Next question, next section. In this section here, you are being asked about your project. So we need a title. We need you to provide a short description of your project. This is a description that you would be happy to share with publicly if required. Then we'll go into the section on the actual opportunity, challenge or gap in the market that you've identified that you want to explore through the seed project. Next slide, please. In the next section, here's an opportunity for you to tell us about the research and development activities you would like to undertake through the project. And you need to talk about how the R&D is going to support your work through this period. You'll also be asked to let us know about the expected duration for the project. We anticipate on seed that people will be working on the projects for up to 6 months. On question 6, you need to demonstrate how your activities are achievable in the time frame. Next slide, please. Thank you. On budget information, we're not asking you for a detailed Excel or templated budget at this stage, but we do need to know how much you're applying for. So here, for instance, you'll be putting in £10,000, that's the limit. And underneath, you should break down how you anticipate allocating those costs. Typically, we would see applications at a seed stage or funding at a seed stage being targeted or spent on staff time and potentially subcontractors. There's obviously extra guidance you can see on eligible project costs, but typically those are the kinds of things we see. Importantly, The time that you'll spend with PDR and Alacrity should also be factored into this. So for instance, if you're spending, if you have 3 2-hour sessions with PDR, we recommend you allocate half a day to a day of your costs to the time you'd be spending with them. And the same would be true with the Alacrity Foundation. So there you'll have 3 2-hour mandated sessions. So we'd recommend you factor in your costs for attending those as half a day or a day of your staff time. Next slide, please. Okay, on project impacts, Matt mentioned these earlier. There's quite a bit of guidance on these. We're obviously looking at the economic impact that a project might have. So there's detailed guidance here on what you might want to consider covering. This will be elements like the amount of spend you anticipate there being in Wales, the direct benefits to yourself or your business, either through direct revenues or sales or exports. It may be that you're trying to develop a new business model through this project, so we'd like you to explain that here as well. Longer term, you may want to factor in some of the longer term impacts that this award might have, or successful delivery of this project might have through, for instance, development of new IP for your business, or through creating new jobs. Next slide, please. Looking further into the impacts, here's an opportunity for you to discuss the potential social or cultural impacts that your project might have. As examples, you may be enhancing representation of Welsh culture through your project. There may be an increase in diversity or access through your project, or you may, through the project, be able to reach new or underserved audiences, or under-accessed markets. Next slide, please. On positive environmental impact. So again, you may want to refer back to some of the guidance on this, but we are looking at how you might be addressing reduced environmental impact on your company, how this project might lower emissions, reduce transport, for instance, and reduce repurposing materials, or how this project might lead to more efficient, energy efficient processes or ways of working. These are just examples, they're not exhaustive. You may have other ideas for how your project might address these areas. Next slide, please. So importantly, our final section is the completion of the baseline survey and our diversity monitoring form. To generate the number that's requested here on the baseline survey, you need to actually complete the baseline survey first. And when you go into the baseline survey, it's really important that you tick the box that says that you're applying to receive funding from Media Cymru. Again, once you complete the baseline survey, it will generate a reference number that you can put into this box. You also need to confirm that you have completed your diversity monitoring form. Next slide, please. Okay, so that draws us to a close on the main part of the presentation. What we want to do is open up to questions now. So we will take a look at the chat and the Q&A section. And we also have a few questions that were submitted to us previously. I would also just add to everybody that the application area does provide a way for you to submit questions to us, or ask any questions, the generic Media Cymru email address. What I would recommend is that if you don't receive a response within 24 hours, you contact us again. But generally what happens is it goes to the generic email and it will be shared between the team, and we'll be able to get back to you pretty quickly with a response. So let's take a look at some questions. Okay. I'm just having a quick look now. Okay, so we received a question on what can the money been spent on? Could it be used to fund my time and the time of a software developer? The short answer to that is yes, it could be used for your staff time and a software developer. So a software developer would be considered as I said earlier, to be a subcontractor, so their costs would be eligible. Okay, let's take a look at some more. Don't know if any of my colleagues can see any other questions that have come through, but feel free to chip in if there's anything that you've spotted that we need to cover. So I have a question here. Can some of the funding be used to purchase equipment to help with R&D? Ideally, you wouldn't be buying equipment, but if it is absolutely necessary, we would take a look at that and you could put it in as a cost. Okay.
There's questions come through, Adam, about the kind of number of projects that people can be involved in, and I think that's been answered online, but we ask people to lead on one only, but then they can be collaborative partners in a number of different applications, which I think that's the steer we're giving. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, that's correct. So ideally, you would be a lead applicant on one project, but if you're collaborating with other people, that's absolutely not a problem. In fact, we encourage people to collaborate. That's great. Okay, I've got a question here. Is it open to sole traders? Yes, it is open to sole traders. Again, going back to...
Question, Adam, can some of the funding be used to purchase equipment?
Yeah, I think I covered that a second ago. That is fine. Generally, we don't see people buying equipment through our applications, but I think it's fine for you to put equipment costs in. We can get back to you with a more formal question if you want to email us with that. But yes, let's just say yes, you can put in equipment costs.
Yeah, and I would just add that, but they'd have to be commensurate with the nature of the project. You know, typically, as you say, Adam, we'd see people costing in their time and the like for these sort of smaller scale seed projects with not vast amounts of equipment costs. So you've got to think about the kind of proportionality between the request for equipment and the nature of the project that you're undertaking.
Okay, I'm going to quickly look through these. Would this fund support artist collaboration with a focus on sound, looking into development research of how to create immersive environments? I've just had a colleague walk into the room who's just directing me to some of the questions.
I'm happy to just step in on that particular.
Yeah, go for it.
That sounds like it would align nicely with the priority area, which is around immersive storytelling through extended reality technologies. Obviously, our understanding of immersion would include sound as well as vision. So yeah, that feels like it's potentially a really interesting area. I see Andy and Joe have got their hand up as well.
Yeah, I just noticed that there is a question in there. Is there any specific desirable outcomes, such as presentation, public actions, or can it be ideas, phase of development? This comes from Justin. What we're kind of expecting at the end of this is a feasibility report. So it means it's a seed level, it's an investigation to work out, can the idea that I've come up with or the challenge that I've identified, can that result in a viable product or service or experience as we described earlier? It's not necessarily to have achieved that, it's more to work out, is this something that can be then developed further, which is why we then have the development fund that we also release a little bit later in the year. And the other thing then we would expect is some form of pitch deck. So something that shows your thinking around how you would take that forward. So would it be applying for more grants? Would it be taking the advice that Alacrity gives you about ways in which you could secure further funding? Anything you want to add, Joe?
Yep. As part of that, Andy Tweet at Alacrity also supports you in writing a business plan. So yeah, you would have a feasibility report and a pitch deck that would include a business plan as part of your outcomes for your feasibility within seed.
That's great. Thanks both of you for that. I know that's come up before from other applicants. What exactly is it that we're looking for to be delivered at the end? And I know some people might look at this amount of money and go, it's not possible to create a piece of content or a proper proof of concept as a immersive experience, for instance. That wouldn't be the expectation with this kind of award. I think it is going to be more you evidencing that you've done some research and testing, and it may be that the deliverable is a paper-based or a visual walkthrough, sort of artist's impression of what it might be if it's in the space of virtual experiences, for instance, as opposed to you actually creating the experience. We're not expecting people to do that at this budget level. It's really going to be demonstrating that you can see a route forward, and that there's an opportunity for potentially further investment. In fact, you could position this as being almost like a basic business case that you're working towards with the seed fund. Okay, there's a couple of other questions here. Is it possible to have a chat with someone before submitting? Right. First of all, what we'd like you to do is email the inquiries email address. We will get back to you straight away. If it looks like that it's a question that requires us to get in touch with you directly or get on the call with you, then absolutely we'll do it. We're hoping that the application process is relatively straightforward and the guidance is fairly clear. But if there's anything that we've not covered, obviously we'll try and get back to you. There's another question here. Andy and Joe, I think you got hands up again.
Yeah, so Sonny has raised an important point. If the research fails or shows insufficient results, is there a penalty? No, in fact, we would see that as a successful outcome. So what we're trying to do here is to manage the risk of development. That's why we offer seed funding as an initial entry into this area. What we would hate to see is people investing lots and lots of money into ideas that don't end up going anywhere. It's much better to undertake a seed program such as this, do the feasibility investigation. If you find out that at that point, actually, this is not feasible, we can't take this forward, that's great, because you can stop the idea there before you invest any more money and go and develop a new project that maybe then does have more promise. So yeah, failure is a very special term, I think, within innovation, which is really just about learning and managing your risk.
I would add to that R&D funding is there to help de-risk your activity. So the fact we've got so much engagement from everyone today is great. It is an amazing opportunity for you all to go out there, test, do things that you wouldn't ordinarily have capacity to go and do. And that's what we're here for. So yeah, we'd rather you got on with it, fail fast, move forward, than be wandering around trying to think about what you're doing and not have any support for it. There's another question here from Phoebe. The project we would like to propose would be looking at provision for female LGBTQ plus directors, screenwriters, and those who have care and responsibilities. Would that sit within the new and inclusive new business models and production processes that could be developed into product service provision? Apologies for reading all of that out, Phoebe. I think it might just be of interest to everybody. I would say absolutely. This sounds like the kind of thing that we could get behind. The important thing is, obviously we're trying to expand reach and provision, and develop greater access to the sector. So it sounds to me like you would be trying to integrate new approaches and develop a new business model. Yes, absolutely, no problem. Addressing areas where the sector has identified that there are gaps is absolutely something we're interested in trying to support.
Yeah,
I
just wanted to underscore what you're saying, Adam. It feels like there's lots of interesting parts there that sit, fairly and squarely within our remit. Mentioned at the beginning, we're all about inclusive economic growth. And you can see already that Phoebe's identified particular challenges that are going to require some kind of innovation in order to help and develop those new business processes and the like. So yeah, absolutely, that feels like very much it's within our remit.
I think the other thing to add to that is that it people to look at what we're doing and assume that R&D immediately requires some form of technology. That's not necessarily the case. We are looking at how you're evolving your working practice as well. So R&D into best practice, or thinking about how we might be able to do things better, is absolutely just as important as people testing new technology. What else do we have here? Okay, I don't know if anybody else from our team is spotting any of the questions they want to pick up on. I will try and pick off questions where I can.
There's a question from Jim about AI that I'm not sure if we've covered, talking about AI being a very fast-moving sector, and it's hard to know what other established tech companies may release and whether that would work against the application. I mean, my view on that would just be, yes, very much we are working within a fast-paced tech sector. And so the kind of evaluation of that application would very much have to demonstrate how the R&D that's being proposed is differentiated from what's already out there. You know, have you thought about what the particular gap is, the particular challenge that hasn't been addressed yet? And that will be, yeah, the kind of thing that the review panel will be taking into account when assessing the application. Obviously, if you submitted something around AI where we were aware that there was potentially already a solution on the market, then that would go against that particular application.
Adam, a couple in chat. One about immersive storytelling, and then also one around an advanced question around an idea around generic content creation and how they might phrase the application to make sure it's about R&D and not about funding content creation.
Okay, I'll pick up that one first. I think I've got that here. It might be useful for some people to take a look at the organisation that existed before Media Cymru, which is called Cluster. There are a lot of projects, there's a lot of case studies on there of projects that have been through a similar sort of process of R&D. What I would say on that is, if you're looking at new processes or procedures or new approaches to content production, so for instance, you're trying to figure out how virtual production might inform your working practice, that's not something that would typically get funded by a broadcaster or a film fund or any of the sort of traditional funders out there. So you testing a new technology to create a form of content would be something that we would look at, but the R&D would be in the application of that technology rather than the piece of content. So I don't know if that helps, but the process you're going through is what we're interested in, and the question you'd be posing is, could this technology improve our approach to producing a particular type of content? Content is the happy outcome for you. You know, I know a lot of people are very focused on, you know, delivery of content, but as an R&D fund, what we're particularly interested in is how is it that you got there, and seeing how you've reflected on that process. So yeah, absolutely. If content is an outcome, no problem, but it's the systematic approach to creating it that you'd be applying the R&D proposal to.
Just to pick up on Ellie's example around the question around immersive storytelling, I think we've covered the fact that, you know, XR and virtual reality, augmented reality are very much in scope. As Adam says, maybe look at the projects we funded through Cluster. We've funded a wide range of projects in this space, things that look at virtual reality and healthcare. We've had augmented reality experience developed in relation to particular places. So that's all very much in scope, but the kind of follow-on question then is, what's the pathway after the seed round? And so just to reiterate the point that Adam made, which is funding through this particular competition goes up to £10,000, but later in the year, probably the autumn, we will be running further competitions called the Development Fund and the Scale Up Fund, which will give awards of up to £50,000 in the case of the Development Fund, and potentially up to something like £250,000 for the Scale Up Fund. We're just kind of figuring out the details of those calls at the minute, but we'll be providing more information about them, as I say, probably in the autumn. Joe and Andy, I think you've got your hands up.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody in the chat has asked for freelancers. Can some of our budget be allocated to our time spent on the duration of the project? Absolutely, yes, that is what we want you to be budgeting within the project. Also, within that, don't forget that there are some things that are compulsory for you to attend. So sessions with us at PDR, sessions with Andy at Alacrity, don't forget to budget your time for attending those as well.
I'm happy to go back just briefly to the question we had around the immersive storytelling. So just as a step-by-step here, if you have an idea and you are not sure which form of XR is most appropriate for you to pursue, that might be what you consider coming to us to do an R&D project around. So if, say, you've optioned a book that you think has the potential to be developed into an AR or VR or some other kind of immersive experience, you might want to take that book, spend a bit of time researching what's going on in the sector, what might the most appropriate route forward be, what's going on with the XR market at the moment. And then at the end of it, you'd be saying, here's my proposal, here's a sort of business case. We've worked through all the options. We think the optimum approach for addressing this narrative is this form of XR experience. So that's the kind of business case R&D mashup that I'd be recommending you look at if that was what you were thinking of doing around immersive storytelling. I think the temptation for a lot of people is to immediately go, I've got an idea and it is a VR experience. What we're suggesting is you take a step back from that, use something like the seed fund to explore all the routes that it could be created, all the ways that it could be created as a piece of content before you commit to absolutely this is why it has to be VR. Hopefully that helps.
There's a similar one that I've noticed in the chat. It says, you mentioned you are particularly interested in VP productions. I'd like to build a VP studio in Newport. Will this qualify, especially for narrative fiction sector? So if your idea was simply that you want to enter the VP market and open up a new studio that competes with other people providing VP productions, then typically that would not be seen as research and development. However, if you identified a gap in the market where narrative fictions aren't being well served, especially in the Newport area, and you are going to do an investigation in how to serve that need that might include new VP provision, then that could be R&D. So there's a subtle difference there between exploring something based around a need, an unmet need that you wish to serve, versus simply trying to enter the market. And the simply trying to enter the market part would not typically be R&D.
Okay, I don't know if anybody wants to pick up at this question about the Ladybird guides to VR XR. I would personally look at festivals like South by Southwest that tend to showcase what's cutting edge and what's happening at the moment with VR XR experiences. There tend to be a lot of showcases around film festivals these days, as well as particular VR XR showcases anyway. I don't know if any of my other colleagues have got suggestions on where people might take a look to do a bit of early, sort of pre-research into this. before they consider applying in.
Adam, I think it might be useful to point out that we've got Robin Moore's expertise as well at Shush, who might be able to support people around what is available in XR. Because
yeah, I think it's maybe two questions here, isn't it? It's what technologies exist out there that you could use versus what experiences or what's kind of cutting edge in terms of what's already been created. So certainly there are providers in the within the cluster South Wales CCR that you could take a look at, so people active in this space. But look, if your activity is in South Wales, or you're based in South Wales, in fact Wales more broadly, and you want to collaborate with businesses that are outside Wales to achieve your project, that's fine. Again, that goes back to having collaborators that you're working with who might be able to bring some of their expertise or equipment or technologies to help you support your project. I can see in here there's some other notes Sally has put in here into the chat, XR stories. So there's a lot of resource out there for you if you want to get a look at what kind of things are happening. I think the bigger thing that you might be wanting to do at a seed scale, seed stage, is scoping out where you know who the appropriate collaborators might be to achieve it if you don't have that expertise yourself. That might simply be part of your scoping exercise.
I'd also just throw into the mix, it'd be worth checking out Immerse UK, which is a network run by Innovate UK. And again, just sort of engaging with them, their events, but also some of their outputs as well, will give you a good feel for the kind of landscape of XR across the UK.
Okay, we're still looking across the chat for if there are any other questions. If there are no more, I think we'll give it another couple of minutes and then maybe draw it to a close. As I've said before, very happy to take inquiries direct to the Media Cymru email address. We will get back to you within 24 hours. We'll just keep this open, keep the chat open for another couple of minutes. But unless there's anything else any of my other colleagues want to say, I think we will start drawing this to a close now. Okay, I can't see any more specific questions coming through. So, Matt, did you want to say make any final comments before we look to close?
Just will ask maybe whether Gemma or Ellie could just double check on the questions that were submitted in advance, whether there's anything in there that we haven't covered. It's worth a quick look at them. I just, thank everyone for attending this session, and just also reiterate that what we're hoping to do is, historically we did have a lot of one-to-ones and the like, but what we're trying to do through this session and sort of associated events is to encourage people to share their questions now, if they haven't been addressed through this Q&A or via the chat, if they could send them through to the Media Cymru inbox, which is media.cymru@cardiff.ac.uk. What we'll look to do is to produce answers that we can then share via FAQs on our website with everyone, so that everyone is treated equitably and has access to the exact same information. If there's a very specific query that relates to your organisation or whatever, then of course we'll get back to you. But what we're trying to do is, present information that everyone has kind of equality of access to. So it's media.cymru@cardiff.ac.uk. I just seen there's a question there about the email address.
There are a couple of final bits just to cover off. One is around the type of grants. So these are grants. The funding is given to you to undertake the R&D activity. They are not repayable. It's a grant. Secondly, on intellectual property, great. We encourage you to develop and create more IP within your business to go out there and exploit. We don't take any of your IP, so we're not taking a share of your copyright. we're literally here to try and support your activity and get you taking risks and hopefully generating some great projects. And
a couple of specific questions. I think somebody asked about the review process earlier, so it's just worth saying that, you know, the applications are reviewed by a panel that includes members of our team, but also external experts, people from outside Media Cymru, from outside Wales, who provide expert input across the different range of areas that we're looking to fund. See, Jim's asked a question about the number of successful applicants as well. I think in the last round of the seed fund, we funded 22 projects, something, right? It was between 20 and 30 last time round. It really depends on the number of good applications, Jim, to be honest. We'll look to fund everything that we think meets the quality thresholds that we set for this. We're obviously sort of midway through Media Cymru at the moment. We have kind of quite a lot of scope for investing in all the good ideas that come through. So yeah, historically we've tended to support around 20 to 30 applicants in each round of the seed fund. So that gives you a feel for the approximate number, but there's no hard fast limit on it.
Can I just come back quickly on something? So just to follow up to the chat, I've seen a couple people talking about a Discord group or a WhatsApp. I'll be sending a follow-up email after this webinar with all of the guidance documents, the recording itself, and the slide PowerPoints. And what I'll also do is I'll put some information in there about what we could do in terms of a WhatsApp or a Discord group, because I think I'd be keen for it to be sort of owned by you guys, if that sounds like what you'd like. So yeah, I'll be in touch afterwards. Thank you so much.
okay, I think that's it.
Have we covered this question that came in advance around an idea centered on generic content creation, but seeking funding for the research activities around the content creation? And then a sort of follow-up to it is saying, what about market research and rather than technology or process research? I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Matt, we covered that one in the chat, and also
Great.
Andy answered it earlier.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, I am going to suggest we cut off there. Thanks everybody for joining this morning, and thanks for your questions. And yeah, we look forward to seeing your applications. And again, any further questions following this presentation, please get in touch with us.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.